myself with low vision. I walked towards there, and I wasn't sure if there was a door there or if it was just an open space. So I took my chances and I walked forward and I face planted into the wall that was beyond the door. And the director of visual arts freaked out, and she said, "You're going to have to do digital photography where you're outside in the computer lab under all the light, and you won't have to have any interactions with the black room because, there's people's artwork developing in there, and if you turn on the light, you can ruin the artwork." So it was because I couldn't see inside the room, like nothing at all. The other students, of course, were sighted, so they can see some of whatever was in there. I was the only one that was barred from going in there. That was immediately put down. No ifs, ands, or buts. And I was okay with that.
That's interesting. One of the things that I have found to be true in life is that unfortunately, when we have some sort of a disability, there are always going to be things that we have to decide what to make an issue of and what to let go of. And that's really difficult. Knowing when to just sort of go about your business, not make an issue, and then knowing when to, make an issue of it or complain. Hard to say. I mean, I don't know if I would have complained because I'm not interested in art. So I understand the situation. It's hard for me to relate to that, because that's not my expertise. But that is really interesting. So, how would that work? Would students create artwork in there and then just put it in that room without the light? Can you try to explain it a little bit more?
Okay, so the black room or the dark room, which is an old school method that is used to develop black and white photography and negatives and things like that. And those types of photos require a certain liquid to be saturated in, like tubs of liquid to go in there. And they hang under, supposedly they hang under these really bright red lights in order to create the certain style that you want. These are colorless photos. Once you take them, it comes out completely blank, like there's nothing on it. And then when you put it in the solutions, I guess they develop and become whatever it was you took a picture of. And that's the old school fashion of developing photos. That photography class did not believe in the quick, fast route. The instructor wanted their students to experience the manual labor of creating art so that they could have a better appreciation of a photo.
Sure. They wanted you to basically if there can be any analogy, they wanted you to basically bake from scratch and not just heat something up.
Yes. They wanted, right. Yeah, you pretty much had to work for whatever it is you set your mind to for creating things.
Right. That's interesting. Yeah, I've never really spoken to anyone who has a degree in photography. But I guess that, interests some people, I guess, if they want to maybe be a photographer or if they want to work for a magazine company or an art company, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or things like that. So then you started taking these courses in digital art. Okay, so then what happened?
The digital format involved Mac computers and digital cameras, whereas the photos came out in color, and you can use Photoshop and or Illustrator or Adobe Image and things like that to manipulate the photos with a computer yourself. So for myself, because I couldn't see the thing, physically couldn't see it very well, I had the opportunity to change the contrast to my liking and or, go through the whole process of adding whatever extra layers that I needed in order to be able to visually access and interact with things properly. And I was okay with that, I didn't want to mess up anybody's artwork in the black room anyway. So I was terrified, some senior was probably working really hard on something, and here I go, just stumbling in there, knocking over a tub and ruining their senior thesis. Didn't want that on my hands.
Right, right. Yeah, I guess they would take their artwork and that would be their project. That would end their semester. And what years were you in university?
Between 2008, actually
Oh,
2007 and 2011.
oh, okay. Oh,
Yes.
all right. So it really wasn't that long ago. So I'm kind of that's interesting that they were using an old-fashioned or a more drawn out method. That's all right.
Yes. Yes. That is, those are the methods that I will never forget. Another experience I had with this very visual world was making books from scratch.
Hmm. Okay, what does that mean?
Bookmaking. Okay, bookmaking was basically how you would thread a book together, and use the pages and use wax threading. The book binding. I don't know if you've taken a print book before and explored it, like touch the bindings and feel where the threading met the pages and things like that. Some of those books from the older days were made by hand, and I'm still able to produce a book by hand with some modifications to match my kind of vision loss.
Hmm.
Yes.
Okay. Why would we want to produce a book by hand? What is the how is that how is that useful, I guess? I mean, I understand what you're saying, but what's the use in creating a handmade book? What do you mean?
The well, there's a couple of reasons for creating a book by hand. One would be therapeutic practices, or I should say the best practices for creating a book by hand. Therapeutic, keeping your hand dexterity on point, being able to grasp small objects with your finger points and things like that. And your motor skills with your hand and eye coordination, I guess.
Okay.
And other things. Now I can actually make a book from scratch for a Braille book if I wanted to. And if you wanted to add a personal touch to it as a gift, you can make a book from scratch for somebody. A journal book. Like I made a journal book to keep track of my experiences during the pandemic.
Hmm.
So with that, I got to go back in my old school archives and whip out my skills, which I surprisingly found to be still pretty good under serious modifications, though. If you work bigger, you can see better, and with brighter light, you're good.
All right. All right. So, what were some of the experiences that you wrote about in this handwritten book about the pandemic, as you
Um,
say?
well, just pretty much, put the time and like the date and time of which I wrote the book, and I just talked about buying pizza from Domino's and what I ate and what the weather was that day. So somehow historians will find it and be like, hey, this person was eating some Domino's, jalapenos and chicken Alfredo pizza.
Mm, mm. I would say that's delicious.
It is.
My pizza. No, no, no. There's a level above that. You got to get the black olives, jalapenos, and the sausage all together. Mm.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But
Definitely.
I will disappoint you, Caspher, because what is a podcast? What is an episode of Aaron's Opinion without a tiny bit of disappointment? A,
Hey, it
histor-
is what it is.
a historian might look at Casper's book and they might say, wow, that girl, that lady, she didn't really have much to say if all she was talking about is pizza. That's pretty boring. But they might say they might think that's really boring, or they might say that's pretty interesting. But then again, then again,
Yeah.
I am someone who is fascinated by history. So we still know what people ate thousands of years ago, which is pretty cool, pretty interesting. If you were asking me or you wanted to know, I'll tell you they ate far more fish and berries and weeds and little plants than we actually think. They ate some meat, but they were more vegetarian and more into fruits thousands of years ago than we had once.
Sounds quite nutritious now. Like,
I
yeah.
mean, I would be the last to comment. I'm not an expert about it. There's a lot of, I was watching a particular program about it just the other day. There's a lot of debate in the archaeology community on were they truly healthier back then, or were they just mentally a lot tougher to put up with that back then? Probably a combination of things. The people probably were tougher mentally, and some of the things they ate probably were really good for them. Other things, just like today, were probably really horrible for them, but they still ate it. So who knows?
Yes.
Who knows? People haven't changed much. So they probably had junk food or pleasure foods that they ate that they knew weren't good. There was weird things you learn on YouTube when you love history, as I do. There was some sort of a fossil or archaeology remains of some person, and it showed that all of their teeth were missing, and
Wow.
nobody else in this particular village, in this particular community, nobody else. If I can find the video, see, I'm shooting myself in the foot. If I can find the video again, I'll send it to you. Don't worry, I probably won't be able to find it, but I'll try to with YouTube, it's like a vortex of unearthing your archive and unearthing things that you think you saw. If I find it again, I'll send it back to you. It was really well done. In fact, I reached out to this person on YouTube and said, hey, come on over to Aaron's Opinion, man, because I have a lot of questions for him. Anyway, after I was just completely distracting myself, the fact is that they noticed that this particular archaeology site was in, I don't know, modern day Saudi Arabia or the Middle East, and they discovered that what it was that this particular woman also had a lot of sugar in her blood and in her DNA. Where did all of that come
Oh.
from? And then they discovered. Now, can you take a guess on what it was that made her teeth fall out?
Sugar canes.
Precisely. They believe that she basically was a date addict, that she developed an addiction to eating dates, and all she would eat is dates, apparently. That's what they theorized. And apparently, she ate so many that the sugar in the dates rotted her teeth out. So, you hear these weird little interesting stories. But Domino's Pizza. I don't know, listener. What do you think? Let's have a poll out there. Let's poll the audience. You guys should comment below on YouTube or wherever you're listening, and say, I don't know. What do you think? Do you think Caspher's book will be interesting in 100 years, or we don't care that she ate pizza 100 years ago? That's a cool thing to think about. That is a cool thing to think about. I think, for me, as someone who has been working online for the past 5 years, I've already been used to staying at home. I had to go outside just a few minutes ago to get some fresh air with my brother because I've been inside so much. And I think that a lot of blind people feel very frustrated now, even more so than ever. But really, the only thing we can do is try to keep up with our careers, try to have a podcast, try to maintain some sort of a documentation of our lives like podcasting is. But it's been a bizarre year. It really has. I had some trips planned that I had to cancel. So, but that's life. Some of my students have been telling me, Caspher, they say, I'm bored. Students say all over the world. Well, I say, are you sick? Do you have the sickness? They say no. I say, well, I'd rather be bored than get sick.
I agree. I couldn't agree more.
Oh, I don't know. I've had some other opinions. You'd be surprised. I've had some people say some silly stuff. Well, people are weird. There's been a wide range of answers about that. Yeah, and then you have the people, who just don't believe in it at all, and that's really scary. Those people scare me more than the pandemic itself. So I don't
couldn't agree more to that as well.
Well, good. Well. Since you're so agreeable, we'll have to have you on the show again, since you think all of my opinions are right. So.
Not a bad idea.
So all right. So you're hanging in there because of all of these things. So then you got into teaching